I may, just to bring greetings. So a pleasant good morning, a warm and pleasant Monday morning to everyone, and welcome to Podcast Land. This is Zoom, and we have here one-on-one this morning with Professor Errol Morrison, University past President Extraordinaire, and I have Dr. Arnett Campbell and Professor Colin Giles, the Acting President. We are here today, ladies and gentlemen, to discuss the future of the professoriate, and I would like Professor Colin Giles to bring greetings on behalf of the University of Technology, Jamaica. So without any further ado, I am going to allow Professor Giles to have the floor at this time. A pleasant good morning, everyone.
Thank you so much, Professor Thorpe, and I thank you all colleagues for being here. I just want to acknowledge Professor Morrison, our guest speaker, and Dr. Arnett Campbell, other members of the academic and administrative staff at UTech, visitors to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, all, a pleasant good morning to you. It is really a pleasure for me on behalf of the University of Technology, Jamaica, to extend these greetings. And Professor Thorpe could not have selected a more appropriate speaker for this podcast, someone who is steeped in research, someone who has led research projects, someone who has led research at the highest levels, not only at the University of Technology, Jamaica, but elsewhere. In fact, Professor Morrison, I think, was the first double professor at the University of the West Indies, having been made a professor of both endocrinology and biochemistry. And we know that his experience has resulted in many persons being groomed in research who continue to blaze many trails, both locally and overseas. It has been my pleasure to have had the opportunity of working closely with Professor Morrison. I've learned quite a lot from him, and Prof, I just want to say to you that I owe a lot to you in terms of my own personal development, even although I was not one of your graduate students, but in a sense, you can consider yourself to be one of my major mentors, because through your guidance, I have been able to get some experience in academic leadership and in academia in general. And your legacy will continue through the work that you have done at the University of Technology, Jamaica. And so, colleagues, all, I just want to say to you that you are in for a treat, because Professor Morrison has many insights that he can share. And I know that he could speak all day, but we won't stress him too much, especially during this COVID-19 time, and we have to make sure that we preserve the best among us. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, all, I just want to extend greetings and thank you all for joining us on this very special occasion.
A pleasant thank you, Professor Giles. You couldn't have said it much better than I myself. Indeed, sir. Indeed, we are very pleased to be in such esteemed company, and thank you so much. Now, as I said, Professor Morrison, you know, there is a following in the university community, and I did agree we want to do this one-on-one, but I have colleagues everywhere saying, no, man, I want to hear what Professor Morrison is saying.
Pump it up.
Yes, pump it up. You know, all right. So
if they can't take the heat to the kitchen, we can escort them up.
All right. So let them. So right now I'm getting the hits coming on my WhatsApp groups. I have access to everybody in the local community. Welcome, colleagues. Welcome. A pleasant welcome as you join this morning's session. You know, beautiful Monday morning in Kingston City. And for those of us who are here at the university's main and associate campuses, a pleasant welcome. You know, for those of us who are in the alumni and in the diaspora, also a very pleasant welcome to you all. It is my distinct pleasure as the host of this university's podcast, along with my colleague, Dr. Arnett Campbell. We are here to bring you the future of the professoriate. And I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen who are just joining, as it is, ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a very warm and special treat on a Monday morning. The sincere best wishes of the university in having this special lecture on the future of the professoriate. I am here with Dr. Arnett Campbell, the co-host of this series. This is a combination of what we call the Caribbean Thought Leadership activity that we started as of April 2021. And Dr. Campbell and myself have been airing this podcast for the university. And in conjunction with the UTech Professoriate series, alumni and series, we also are very happy to have this event this morning. Last time it was Professor Rosalie Hamilton who joined us as distinguished company. And today we continue in the trend here on December 6th. I am sincerely asking all colleagues who have expressed the great desire to be with us, and I'm allowing you to do so, please to just ensure that your mics are muted, although I will be emphasizing that for this podcast myself. I'm sincerely asking all my professional colleagues within the academia to ensure that their mics are muted. Before this is actually placed in the archives of the university, it will be vetted accordingly to allow for only high quality assurance recordings. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let me just put this thing on the courtesy. Be comfortable among us, and I want us to just take note of the conversation because it's a casual conversation. And let me just put my agenda up. So courtesy is allowing. I did have the very timely introduction of Professor Colin Giles, who brought greetings just now on behalf of the University of Technology, Jamaica, in this regards, this particular lecture on Zoom. And as most of us are just in this time of the pandemic, most of us are really, becoming more comfortable with this format. So I really want to thank you again all for coming. The conversation we'll have, we'll just take this agenda format for a matter of record. We'll just do a kind introduction as well to Professor Morrison, our special guest, and we will just get the ball going into an open discussion on the professoriate, the changing role of this professoriate, and we'll allow for you some time to do any Q&A relating to the matter. So, it is indeed my pleasure to have us all. Professor Errol Morrison, ladies and gentlemen, let me get right into it. The Jamaican scientist who has done extensive work in diabetes and is a former president of the University of Technology, Jamaica. He entered the University College of the West Indies, where he acquired an interest in biochemistry. He subsequently gained a medical degree from the Royal University of Malta, a master's degree from the University College of London, and a doctorate and 2 professorships from the University of the West Indies, where he served as Pro-Vice Chancellor and Dean of the School of Graduate Studies and Research. He then left the university to become the president of the University of Technology, Jamaica. I happen to have been here in that tenure. I know it was over 7 years easily, between 07 and 14. It was a distinguished period indeed. He has carried out pioneering work in the medical field with a particular interest in diabetes. In 1982, he pioneered the formation of the Diabetes Association of the Caribbean, which now has 26 member countries, and was its president from 1985 to 1987, and its vice president from 1989 to 1991. In 1991, he launched the University Diabetes Outreach Project with the help of the Wilson Foundation grant. He played a key role in partnerships between the International Diabetes Federation and the Pan-American Health Organization in responding to the emerging pandemic of the type 2 diabetes by applying the St. Vincent Declaration intervention model to the Americas in the form of the Declaration of the Americas in Diabetes, or DOTA as it was called in 1996. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to help me in welcoming Professor Morrison. This short dossier that I have provided here is by no stretch of the imagination his full bio and CV. I had to find a way to try and keep it concise as a courtesy to him, given the extensive achievements he has had in the community. But for those who did not know before today, let me use this opportunity to introduce the standing shoulders of a gentleman who has served the national and the international community well. It is my pleasure to have Professor Errol Morrison on board. I want you to help me in welcoming him this morning. And a special good morning to you, Prof. Morrison. Now, to jump into this and to get us warmed up into our conversation, the professoriate, and as executive chairman's privilege, the professoriate is all of us in this institution, could be here called UTech, or this country of Jamaica, where all of us together collectively as a body define this professoriate. And in this regard, what I would like to say is that all over North America, for example, the historical Black colleges and otherwise have contended in the last couple of years, particularly now in the pandemic, that listen, the professoriate must change. It must exhibit strong levels of servant leadership, entrepreneurship, and experiential learning to drive the academia. Let's see if we can unpack some of that this morning as a part of a conversation with our special guest. This will drive global competitiveness and economic mobilities within the working classes they are contending. Should we not be allowing students to build their own degree pathways, select their own block of courses from across the universities? We were talking about this before the pandemic, but in the pandemic, it would appear that some of these things are now manifesting themselves in various forms because schools and colleges and universities all over the world are closing their doors because of whatever reason. Universities are also now said to be too monolithic, and in a mobile world, we'll need to move to what we call the micro-internet services or e-services enterprise, so that the students, the customers, get an individualized attention experience. Otherwise, we face an e-institutionalized crisis. After all, we are here online this morning, and that's how the university has been running for over 90% of its operations since this pandemic. It definitely might be a way that we're not going back to the traditional face-to-face, but let's unpack it, let's unpack it. Our students engage based on fit for purpose. We have students in universities that remind the professoriate that please note, we are here to get a degree. That's what we are paying for, not to get an education. We need to unpack that as well a little bit. Did we lose our way in some of this regard? This is a talk that we will have some controversial points that might not be liked by all, but let academic freedom reign. The cost of higher education is out of the reach of many youngsters. How can we really be serving the community if we don't take stock of these concerns? Just to preamble the session, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that as we move through in 2021, we are seeing high levels of uncertainty in the research output that drives universities. And we're not talking about just local to Jamaica and the Caribbean, worldwide. We are seeing that there's lower tuition incomes, particularly in this pandemic. Those institutions in the US and the EU and otherwise that depend on international students have had a huge hit. And as a result, the amount that they would dedicate towards research has been significantly impacted. My investigation and research shows that in the EU, for example, just about 20% have access to funding in the top tier of colleges and universities in the EU, like the Russell Group and the Luxbridge groups that present these results. In the EU, they started something just in the last year with the pandemic to try and start restructuring for research because it is really a challenge and it's affecting the survival of the higher education institutions. Well, one argument could be that we should refocus and ensure that STEM education, or STEAM education as they call it, have dedicated and specific focus on areas that have impact for recovery. After all, we're in a pandemic. Should we not be focusing on pandemic and post-pandemic recovery? And the institutions of higher learning, like a UTech, pay care and attention to these things and the potential or possibility of doing the type of impact studies that will determine these outcomes. I put it to us in no uncertain form. We looked very carefully at the academic drift report recently, and 54% of graduates are not going out and getting jobs. 10% getting into higher education globally in many traditional HI institutions. Jamaica no less, we're about 5 to 10%. And those who are graduating from the traditional institution is just about 53, 54% from the four-year degree programs. And four-year degree programs are now turning out up to 7-year degrees with this type of 53% outcome. We probably need a complete pivot there. So should we repurpose the professoriate and the academic given these realities, ladies and gentlemen? Boy, listen, I didn't say it's going to be an easy conversation. I wanted to use that my 3-5 minutes to preamble the argument as Professor Errol Morrison joins us in a debate, which he promises that, listen, if you want easy way out, this is the wrong conversation to have him in. And I would rather enjoy a conversation that puts the facts on the table. So, Prof, my pointer board, my visual deck here says, well, listen, can you, based on that preamble, sir, give the courtesy of a definition, in your opinion, let's start there, of the perspective of what you think the new academic professoriate economy should be looking like? The floor is yours, and ladies and gentlemen, we will allow Professor Morrison to have the floor. We will allow persons afterwards to engage in the dialogue. But let's start the conversation, Prof, and a pleasure to have you this morning. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Hi, Sean. I on it. And earlier we had a chat with Colin. Good to be with you guys. And to be trying to share some of the ideas. I liked your opening ambit there, Sean, and you're putting it all out on the table. Mind you, if you stop to think, and if you used to listen to what I had to say, much of what you're saying now is nothing new, because the forecasting was very much there from then. But let us put things in context, right? And I thought we could, mind you, feel free if you want to interrupt and stop and ask a question, you know, because I was going to free flow.
Yes,
okay?
Sir.
I want to put in context. First of all, I like your opening, the professoriate as opposed to the professor. Yeah. And I think maybe we ought to look at that a little more, because joining us are academicians, some of whom are yet to climb the ladder to the highest rungs in their disciplines and so on. So let me just put that in context, because I thought you observed the whole professoriate in this broadest context, the learning environment. But now, who is a professor? And from an individual enters the academic scenario, the whole title of professor must be at, his horizon in terms of where he wants to get to. But professor in different institutions mean different things. Okay, the simplest, wherein you join an institution, you join a faculty, and you may then rise through the faculty levels. If you're in the North American dispensation, they call you assistant professor, through to an associate, through to a full professor, and if you're worth your salt, maybe even a distinguished professor later on. But in the North American setting, as soon as you enter academia, in the broadest, loosest discussion, you're a professor. So that again is kind of, until you really distinguish yourselves, that is not the kind of scenario with which we are very familiar. Take the other one now, where you also enter and you stay within the confines of that department or faculty, and you rise up serving the university or the institution well, not necessarily distinguished, but well, and long service, and you may gradually rise up to the head of the faculty. Now, in some institutions, the position of head is a professor position. It doesn't mean that one has achieved anything outstanding or new or innovative. It just means that politically, literally, in the institution, you have risen to the head. So as a professor, you're head of that faculty. That is another type of professor. Then you have those professors, again, because of their long-serving teaching, you know, and teaching without any real blemish. Nobody complain, but, you know, reasonable passing and so on. Some of their notes still very old and frayed and yellowed. You know, you're not seeing any real, you know, improvisation from them, but they have been around for a long time, good level passes and so on. And there are some institutions, especially in North America, that have tried to single out these fellows, and they call them a teaching professor, which is a compromise. They haven't really achieved anything outstanding as far as academia is concerned, but you want to give them a good handshake and acknowledge his or her contribution, you know, and you may call him or her a teaching professor. And these are the kinds of things we have been seeing, you know, evolving in institutions, and especially in my own dispensation in the medical field. Again, a lot of fellows who might not have done anything that useful, but they have been around and contributed over time, and you may give them what you call a clinical professorship. Okay, I'm using that kind of deliberate language to get some of you upset. I didn't read, but the point is now I have tried to disseminate and dissect away all the various professorships that are, you know, in the whole, you know, surrounding of academia, and let's get to what we understand as a professor, you know, with our Anglophile upbringing and that kind of orientation. You must be outstanding in something.
Yes.
You must have introduced some new thinking. You must have discovered something, no matter how small. You must have contributed to some body of knowledge, okay? And as a result, you become singled out. And in that contribution, you need to have written it up for your colleagues. And in writing it up, that is a publication, your colleagues no doubt would want to verify and endorse and so on, and before they are really welcoming much of what you have to say. To rise through to that level, okay, wherein we have titles like lecturer, senior lecturer, and professor. You can gain that in you know, by that contribution of publications and so on, or because your contribution is so outstanding and singular, they may give you what you call a personal professorship. And if you are enterprising, as I'm sure the discussion is going to take us into that direction shortly, you may have found something of commercial value, or of value to the private sector trust. So you may be able to expose an institution in the private sector to say, look, what I have to say, what I can do for you will benefit your bottom line. That is income. That's what they are about, right? And as such, they may say, okay, we will fund you for X number of years to flesh out this contribution that you think you'd like to do for us. And as such, we would want the institution where you're attached to assign you as a professor to this particular project, and we will pay all your expenses, research, etc., okay, over the next 3 to 5 years. That is what we did with Rosalia at UTech, okay, and UWA has a few of those as well. So that is the kind of language we use overall, you know, in terms of looking at what is a professorship, who is a professor, etc. Now look, the way we're going to go forward And as you said, Sean, quite rightly, the whole pandemic has now turned us upside down. Upside down in the sense that students don't need to come to university physically anymore, right? You have on the whole academic sphere, what you call MOOCs, the massive online open courses that anybody can take. So you don't need to teach anymore, you know.
That's correct. That's correct.
That is where we're going. Some of us are still holding on to chalk and talk.
Yeah.
Some of us still have projectors, you know. Some of us are moving to the whiteboards, but the students don't need that. You just need to, you know, outline to them the kind of directions, the outcomes that you expect in this particular course, and they can access it on the internet from the best in the world, much better than yourselves. Okay, so don't think that you're special in any way now. The teacher, as a teacher, has been seen, or the professor has been seen, is going out of the window. And if he's not going, you know, by himself, he shall be dashed out. Because, you know, we have now access to information the world over from the best. So what it is you're going to be doing now is you're going to have to be assessing these students to bring them within your own sphere of an institution. And it's your assessment and quality of that and how you will move them into the new direction that is going to begin to assess you as an individual for what you would call upward promotion. And what it is you're going to do. When a student now graduates, okay, you have a degree.
Yes.
What can you do? Where are you going with this?
Fundamental.
How are you going to use this?
Fundamental,
okay?
Yes.
And I think now you have to be prepared to guide these students. Now, this is where a professor who is going to be worth his salt, if you know, or to get that kind of recognition, is going to have to go. What can he open up for his young graduates?
Yes.
Now, what have they graduated in? Is a degree in physics necessary? Is a degree in business in general necessary?
Necessary, yes.
You know, what it is. Now, because there's so many new disciplines, so many new professions that are coming, which we never even thought of just a decade ago.
So correct. Right? So correct.
You have students who need to be thinking down the road, I want to go and help study some of this rocket science, or I want to go and help study climate change and the implications it has. What do I need? I need to understand a little business. I need to understand a little chemistry. I need to understand a bit of geography. I need to understand some biology. So I want to take little courses in these, what we have been calling the cafeteria style.
Yes.
And by going and you take bits and pieces, he or she can build their own degree. And when you build that degree based on the number of assignments and the points that you will give to each of these components, you can say, all right, this is a degree leading to, you know, graduate experience.
Outcomes, yes.
So that degree, now what you're going to call it, will, again, this is where you're going to have to be quite innovative, because you may need to look at the major emphasis either of what has been studied or where it is going and name that. So faculties, as you see it, you know, built environment, FELS, FOSS, and all of these, you know, will disappear.
What did you say, Professor? Boy, you're hitting nails on the head already. They will disappear.
But it has to. It has to, because what you want now is a rounded individual who has a vocabulary that he can now mold into something. Because, you know, stopping at the level of acquiring the vocabulary, which is what I call the degree, is nowhere yet. What you're going to do with it, it must be applicable, it must be implementable in terms of something hardcore.
Absolutely profound.
So where are we going to go with all these massive buildings we have, all these faculty we have who come and they give a lecture and sit down for the rest of the day and chat and sip coffee and all that. All those things are out of the window.
Yes.
Because you're going to have to be prepared to be talking to your students in Sri Lanka, in Timbuktu, in Melbourne, in New York, at all times of day, and to be able to bring them into a framework where by the time they are handing in assignments, and some of the assignments you probably can't even understand yourself, you know, because these are real new stuff. So you have to be reading and keeping abreast of these students. Now, you may say I sound idealistic, and these descriptions are probably leading to the very best of students, but you have to be world class.
That is a reality. That is a reality.
Or you are no class.
You are no class.
So you know, you have to be competitive.
Yes.
You may be in the little microcosm of Jamaica,
yes,
poor third world country,
yes,
but you are still competing internationally. So you have to put out an international quality student.
Yeah, so you are unpacking this quite well, because the argument you are putting forward, and all of us in Zoom land and who are on this podcast, bear in mind what we interpret from Professor Morrison's comments is that the leveraging of the internet as it is now, and now particularly so in the pandemic, it has flattened the playing field somewhat to be allowing that, listen, even though you're in little Jamaica and you are in big this other country, you are having an equal opportunity to be globally competitive. So you are right, very right, that the academia and the professoriate have to pivot completely. But Prof, how are they going to adjust? Because if this traditional monolithic structure as it is.
Hold on now. This is where I'm going now. This is where I'm going now. Hold on. Because we come again. No. So if we're going to be dissolving much of this kind of what we have called so far faculty structures or discipline structures, to broaden it and allow for an eclectic, you know, you put together based on where you think you'd like to go. Of course, you know, one needs to be ahead of the student to be helping to guide them.
That's true.
You have to be right in the forefront of the forecasting and understanding the directions the world is taking, you know, be in touch with cutting edge information and so on, so help guide them. But look, what is going to happen now is the government that probably gives you how much, 30, 40, 50% of your income.
It's about 30%, Professor, about 30% now. Yeah.
All right. But plus they do what you call student loans.
Yes.
What the government will have to do now is say to the institutions, well, look, students are no longer going for your degree in pharmacy. I'm just using names, right? Or your degree in business. They are doing this composite thing. So we're not going to be funding them just to come to university for a 3-year program. We're going to be funding them to pay for the courses that they take.
Yes.
And remember too, you know, as students begin to get into the workforce, they may just want to take a little course to fashion them for the kind of program that they're working in, you know, at the workplace.
Absolutely.
So this piecemeal thing that they can gradually use to build their degree, they may themselves may not even be assured as to the final direction they're taking, but they know they need this to improve their ability to perform in that workplace at that time. So all of that little building. So we see governments giving the students the money to go and look for the courses. So there's no reason why I can't do a course here as UTech, another one at UWI, another one at University of York, another one at, you know, and build. And we have to be able to equate credentialing in the different institutions and be able to come up with a composite degree recognizable for the student.
Wonderful point. Wonderful point.
So your government is going to take away institutional support money. Okay. So if you're depending on I hope I'm not being prophetic.
Listen, Professor, bring it on. We have to face the reality. We have to
If
face
you are going to be competitive, it means then that a student is going to be looking on and say, which is the best of these places to go to get this particular day? And a lot of places may be offering it, you know.
Absolutely.
Therefore, you can't be comfortable and say, look, I'm in Jamaica, my Jamaican students are going to take it. No way.
Absolutely.
I am going to go to London, University of London to get that degree. And when I said go, I mean via the internet. That's how we travel today. You see? So you have to really do, you know, the best in recruiting the best of staff. So therefore, you don't need to employ everybody from Jamaica. Why? You need to employ the best.
And that's the bottom line. And that's globally the best. Globally.
Well, there you are. Can we compete? So when a number of us call ourselves Professor so-and-so, you can't sit at the round table with the international fellows who have been there. Right? So we're fooling ourselves. I used to have a boss when I was at UA, E.V. Ellington was his name. And even in those days, maybe 30 years ago and more, he would say, we're training graduates to perform within the limits of Negril and Moran points. Okay? What does it say to you? We are too provincial in our outlook.
Yes.
And therefore we are going to, but even without pushing into that arena, the world has absorbed us into it now. So we have no alternative. We have to be on the best.
No alternative, Professor.
And how are we going to get the best? Because you can't look to the fellow beside you who is probably no better than yourself, if not even less.
Yes.
To help you improve, you have to get international collaboration. You have to reach out and meet with the very best of minds in the areas in which you're interested in.
I tell you,
how are you going to get there?
This is the welcome to this podcast. Welcome to this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, I have in my company today Professor Errol Morrison. Listen, it's a very tough conversation, very hard to digest for some people in terms of the future of the professoriate. And I am telling you, we are taking it all in because there's a lot of truth to what is being said here. The pandemic is demonstrating the complete need to pivot. So, Prof, what you're saying, Prof, it means that the existing teams and universities and colleges, let us start here in Jamaica, must now sit down and have a hard look because, listen, subvention dollars are very limited. If you're only getting 20 to 30% to run the current academy as it is, to find the other 70% in let us say even pre-pandemic times was in itself giving up problems. It now becomes exacerbated in the context of now dealing with an economy where literally everything is fluid, as you suggested, and you are now having to deal with the fact that the customer, who is a student, right, has all these new options to build out his or her career, which is not dependent, as you correctly said, on any one institution. So listen, I don't think we properly digest this yet enough, Prof. I think even after today, when we finish, we're still going to have to keep unpacking this.
But just hold there a little. Yes. Because as we're saying, the governments are going to be pulling and giving the students the money, literally, you know, to pay for their specific courses. Now, in addition to that, you know, the students have lesser access to funding of their own, you know, because with the pandemic, jobs being lost and so on, so the broader social, you know, repercussion that dominate is bad.
It's escalating.
More and more, they are going to be depending on student loans.
Yes.
And the student loans must come not only from government, but from private sector. Private sector is also very loath to do that because students tend to, you know, neglect, you know, and renege on their payments, and it's difficult to follow them up. So that I won't go down that road, but that's the whole road.
By itself, another talk, another day, yes.
So now let us see how it is we're going to try and stay above water.
The water, yes.
Because as I was just alluding, collaborations.
Yes,
right?
collaboration.
Is not so much who you know as who knows you.
Yes.
And therefore, we need to be able to say to ourselves, look, you can't be just jack of all trades or master of a lot. You're going to have to find a niche that somebody somewhere in the world is going to want to ask of you, right? Come and join the team.
Let us unpack that, Prof. I like that where you're going with that.
Let me just, garnish that a little with a phrase from the old man Mayo, who actually founded the Mayo Clinic, the world-renowned leading medical facility in North America. And what old man Mayo said, if you can make a better shoe, or if you can build a better house, no matter where you are, the world will beat the path to your door.
Wonderful, wonderful, profound.
You hear where we're going?
Profound. Okay. So
excellence then. Excellence.
Yes.
Has to be the order of the day. And no wishy-washy compromise and writings of dubious nature and plagiarizing other stuff. You gotta come out clean and find some niche. If you can't find a niche, you may just not have it. Settle for your teach. Like many of the others, everybody bulk up in the middle of the bell curve. No problem. That's life. But those out front in the front of the bell curve, that is what we're talking about here, I assume.
Of course,
that we want to get them to understand how they're going to have to get into that aspect of the curve and stay there and lead it. Okay, and you're going to lead it from a little third world country, So how are you going to do that? And you do have no resources.
Yes. Fundamental point.
Private sector has still not appreciated, the role that we can play. Do you know that many private sector companies now, when they want an answer to a problem, they turn to North America or to Europe?
That is true. That is true.
Less than 3% of them are using any of our resources here.
That is true.
In fact, I heard of a story. I came from the owner's mouth himself, that his factory is controlled from a center in North America. It closes its operations down and opens it up, determines when it's going to have the necessary keynote and so on, all timed in North America. Jamaican scientists, technologists, workers have nothing.
Displaced completely.
Okay, so in other words, you're in a marginalized world, even in your own, what you think is your own home ground.
No, there you go. And this is profound. Listen,
where you going now?
This is profound.
So where you going?
This is profound.
Where you going? Where you going? You better begin to look outwards.
Yes.
To start writing, read the literature, look at who is doing what where, and dropping them a little email contact.
Yes, indeed.
He or she might not answer,
Yes.
But some will. No matter. You try 100 times, a few might respond. But that is how you're going to, you have to get into some international links.
That's right.
Because that is how you're going to be buoyed up.
The diaspora. Yes.
That is where the money, the research money is there. There's no money for research in the Caribbean, Remember, it's less than 0.1% of the GDP that is used for research and development. And that is not true either.
Yes.
That the government is putting that out, but it's not true. It's 0.003.
Boy, Professor, that make it even more telling.
This is the point I'm making. So we're not ready. And you see, our politicians speak of science and technology and innovation is the way forward, but they don't support it. You try and get a grant to support your work in your IT work that you do. And see how quickly you get even an interest.
That's correct.
In what you do. So mind you, I'm not knocking them in there because they have just some basic survival and poverty and sustainability of food and water. They have all the basic things to cope with. So when you come with esoteric science,
yes,
which is esoteric to them, but basic to us, because we think, when I say science here, I'm not thinking of the laboratory and the test tubes and so on. I'm thinking of a body of knowledge that is able to be dissected and can probably contribute to new thinking, new paths. Because until you start doing new things, you ain't going nowhere.
You're not going anywhere. Well, this prof, you're hitting the nails on the head again. So there's no National Science Foundation type equivalent that we are likely to have in the current scheme of things by government putting on.
From 2003, then Percival J. Patterson, started a national foundation for the development of science and technology, and was hoping to garner from private sector a start in those days of about 100 million JA. They managed to attract only about 50, and been just trudging along. Nothing really happening because nothing there to really bolster any serious and significant support in research. And if you ask anybody about it, they don't even know that name. So, the whole development of research based on support from government and or private sector, unless it's a one-to-one, or it's something that the private sector sees that their bottom line could benefit from, you're not going anywhere. So the majority of our academics are not going to get to the top of the line by distinguishing themselves in their academic pursuits.
In the current format, indeed.
Correct. Therefore, you're going to have to find ways and means of looking out and getting them to be looking in. And the need for that international networking, which again, you don't have to get up and fly nowadays, you can do it on the internet. Yes, you join the variety of programs, conferences, workshops, going, make yourselves available, get your comments in, ask the questions, invite yourself to join, in some of their discussions, and what aspect of it, because again, a lot of research money is not just out there waiting for you to apply along the line that they say. You have to readjust what your own thinking and your own pursuit to meet the kind of money that they're talking about and what directions they want to take it. So you need to be able to fashion that, to get into that grouping. And then again, you still won't work unless you get into that family of really good people. So it's a matter of show me a company and I tell you where you are. This is where you're going to have to aim for.
So let me, yes, Professor.
Okay, go on.
So far you have summarized very well the space of the academia and who the professoriate is. There are so many. There's a broad categorization that even now I'm still unpacking it, from the clinical professor to the teaching professor, and all of them have a role to play in this changing professoriate economy. So you have qualified it so well for us. And you have also qualified for us very well the need to redesign and re-implement. As a matter of fact, rip that script up as it relates to what you provide as traditional classroom curriculum, and realize now in 2021 going forward that students who come as your primary stakeholders are not limited to taking a class only from you as a UTech or a UWI or wherever else. You need to now be a part of that world economy of curriculum. I take that one very seriously. We could be taking the degree from several institutions just to remain relevant. You have also put into context that the professors in the academia must recognize that they are chasing scarce research dollars. And against the background of that, we have to put ourselves into the international community and do not sit and wait on the existing status quo to provide us with those outcomes. You know what you're saying, Professor Morrison. The government of Jamaica is about to table, I think I heard it on the news Friday night, the results of the Orlando Patterson's Educational Transformation Initiative. And in the context of how we are discussing this morning, it will be very interesting to see what are some of those recommendations. I will follow up with you after this podcast to probably do a 10-20 minute dissection of what that is and what we are talking about. But I'm sure what you are saying is on point, given the realities we are seeing right now in the local ecosystem. So you have done a good job so far, Prof, in making it clear. And those who can't take the heat in the kitchen here, listen, please get some water wherever you are, because this is not a light conversation. This is really what you call big people university conversation that we must keep unpacking. So then, Prof, when you say it this way now, the role then of the University of Technology Jamaica. I sit in the Faculty of Engineering and Computing, where I will agree with you, most of my research dollars are coming from the diaspora. Anything I'm looking for, they are donating by way of research grant and equipment and so on, I guess, in Kingston. So you are right. That is my personal experience in how we engage to get outcomes. But if we unpack it, somebody might say, well, Professor Thorpe, you're a bit unfair here now. Don't you think that because you're in the engineering and technology space, which is of a high demand, you're going to get a better preference of an opportunity as opposed to me in X area? You tell me now, in terms of pushing research in some of the other disciplines which don't have this appeal, are you saying to us that we will have no more purpose in the academia? We must probably find something else to do. Is there any such thought process, Prof. Morrison, that because you have a lesser importance, those entities within the university may have to just dissolve themselves and consider something else?
No, not at all. Not at all. If you recall, when I use the word science, yes, I took pains to point out it's a body of knowledge. That's okay, right. In whatever area. That's right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be laboratory text tubes and the IT and all that. A body of knowledge that you could begin to dissect and to see what is therein that you could now use for the benefit of your institution or advancement of your research program, etc., in whatever area. Because I particularly am not sort of restricted to STEM, as people like to call it, right? STEAM, I think I saw you mention that, and STEAM I, where the I is for innovation, and the innovation is key, anything at all, right? You can change. I remember quite often when I would sit with the late Honorable Rex Nettleford, and Rex, would say to us, but what it is we're doing here, we have learned from our youth that you go and you turn the knob and you open the door. Why do you have to turn the knob? Can't you push it up or press it in or slide it? What he's saying is, let us not go down the usual road. Let us see how we can begin to look at things as you may say, out of the box. An old statement, which means very much to us now. And what we're saying is, just look at whatever you're doing and see, is there some new way of looking at it? Turn the ball around. Even although they'll tell you the cricket ball is round, when you turn it around, you see smears and little things on different parts of it. What I'm just trying to say is there's always something different.
Perspective.
Absolutely. That you could probably take on. So what we're trying to say, although we may be using the word science, be not confused at all. It's just a body of knowledge.
That's right.
And
that's right.
There is no marginalization of one's contribution, because let us never forget, that even what they call these days hard science comes out of the philosophy and the early concepts of what you now call the soft science. So it's all connected. So we're not going down that road. What we're just trying to say is, whatever it is you're working with, we want you to dissect it in depth to see how you're going to make a change.
There you go. So okay. Yes, I got that point spot on. Okay. So as a university, we need to now be more focused as it relates to what we are providing as specific research, where we can provide that high impact and make that impact in the global space. Don't try to be all to everyone. Don't try to be, yes.
Yeah. Let me ask you, as a professor at the institution therein,
yes.
What is UTech known for?
Well, you see, and in the context of that,
Don't compromise, Sean. Answer me directly. What is UTech known for?
Well, as it is, full stop. You know, in the scheme of things, someone would have said sports from the days of yours and even earlier. We have made a brand in that, world class.
So how are you studying the sport? Are you providing degrees in sport? Do you have an academy of sport? Where are you going with your sport?
Profound point. I don't have all the answers.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yes.
That's what we're trying to do. And academics tend to think sport is not academia. Yes. Absolute rubbish. You in your internet know the value of, simulations.
That's right.
And to be able to determine, the best approach to a variety of things, to study form, motion, and so on, and to improve on it. This is the academy you should be talking about.
That's right. So that's where the pivot really needs to be. We have a national, a brand.
Sure.
Yes.
I see you now. After years, you're just recognizing that you have a gem in Stephen Francis, the best in the world in coaching.
Yes.
In coaching the short sprints.
Yes.
What you doing about it?
And that should be on top.
That is your entree into the world scene.
I tell you, that's a national product what has been on top, and I will
the reservoir
I will not
of information and methodologies.
I will not excuse ourselves from that reality. I will take it as a prime point of good need.
That is why we started FOSS. But anyway, tell me the next thing. Apart from sport, what else is UTech known for?
Outside of the sport, the track record of the fact that we have always produced the applied graduate, the work-ready graduate, historically from the CAS days until brand UTech. We have provided the working class from engineering, computing, and business that drive this country. And actually, I should say, not only drive this country, it has now manifested itself significantly in the diaspora. That when I travel as a president of a Jamaica Computer Society, which I had been for over 2 years, I find that in every walk of North America and Canada, and you find the CAS UTech alumni community making waves in whatever discipline that they have been engaging over the last 50, 60 years. So we tend to be an applied group of citizens who can adjust and take bodies of knowledge and become relevant and useful. That is what I know the CAS UTech brand has been outside of the sport itself, as you just referred.
Yeah, with a strong component of the technological input in terms of, the implementing of the engineering, the machination,
the automation.
I remember, some of the institutions were belaboring the point that they no longer could get excellent plumbers or welders or things like that. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with expertise wherever expertise is.
Yes.
So where is your faculty of manufacturing?
I love that one.
Or let us put it this way. Let us change it slightly.
To thought leadership, ladies and gentlemen.
Your entrepreneurship and innovation comes closest to that.
Yes.
But that is a thought and discussion kind of group. You want some hard-nosed implementers in the innovation aspect of things, because UTech is known for those two things. I think you spot on. First, sports. Secondly, the technological support, the groups that we have been able to produce all around.
Yes.
And I think that could all be embodied into, the new thinking, making new things, repairing old things,
Absolutely.
looking at things differently. You have to have a niche, and don't spread yourselves beyond that.
Yes, yes. So you're in fact answering the questions very nicely, because I was going to say, what are the new faculty and academic and business and research models? But you just hit the nail on the head. You must have a team of manufacturers. I know the government, through the Prime Minister recently, talk about needing to find more economical housing, low-cost housing. And one thought was, why not try 3D digital manufacture of the housing solutions to cut the cost down? But we don't have a faculty of manufacture. It almost dawned on me now that, listen, that's where we need to push our space. We have to be more creators of what needs to be out there than just being users. Dr. Campbell, you want to join in? I see you putting your hand in.
Yes, I wanted to join in at this time. Prof, excellent discourse so far. As you spoke about innovation, I remember when under your watch, you called me to your office and you said, what is UTEC's response to innovation in IT? And you gave me 1 week to come back to you with an idea. And we came with the dream of SAPNA. And, we are happy to report that the idea blossomed to a level that, businesses have been picking the graduates who have this SAPNA experience as a first choice, not only in Jamaica, but outside of Jamaica. So by now, we should have expanded that into all the programs in the university based on the success we have seen from a SAPNA.
As you're talking on it, I remember, one of the first appointments made at UTEC at this most senior level was a professor of welding. An appointment which was met with derision.
What you say?
Derision. Welding.
Yes, discuss it.
Oh, welding. Yes.
But let us remember, that is the foundation for all manufacturing, your aeroplanes, your major buildings. You need welders of a certain level and niche that can manufacture for the world. Not little tack welding here and there. That's not what they're talking about. And that is where that appointment took us into the Professional Society of Welding in Great Britain. People don't understand these kinds of things, you see, because to them, the local concept of welding is a little man with a little tank of gas on. You see, so you see, again, you're going to need, as an institution, to bring the public awareness up. What you would call popularization of activities to which this country needs to turn to pull itself up, right? And the people need to begin to understand that. But it's a major concern, because how do you get them to even listen? When they are hungry, they have no jobs, the 15 to 24-year-olds are largely, can't read, can't write, not trained, can't do anything. So there are so many other issues. So, we are in I don't want to say it, but it's fact, we're in a kind of little bubble. That, and trying to, extract ourselves from the reality.
So
but we can't.
It's a two-edged sword. We kind of a two-edged sword situation we having to deal with and to adjust accordingly. But you made a profound point just now, If we are to pivot with faculty members in the professoriate being able to demonstrate the type of knowledge, skills, and abilities and attitudes that will bring the professoriate forward to drive the change that we need, I will argue the point you just made, and using the concept of a faculty of manufacturing. In this time, it's probably even digital as well as plant-based manufacturing.
Exactly.
In the industry 4.0, or what we now call the industry 5.0 automation. I would then take the position that you just made to find professors globally then who can sit in these spaces that can support that growth path and that vision. Because failing which, bubble or no bubble, if we do not break the glass ceiling on what is sitting above us, we might sink in that bubble under whatever water that lies there. So I take your point wholeheartedly, Professor Morrison, that we need to have that. You know what this is saying to me, Dr. Campbell, as my co-host, we need to probably put back to the university. And I said, Dr. Young joining. Dr. Young, you might have to mute your mic in joining. Hold on, let me just make sure. As persons recognize what you just said, to break the glass ceiling, we might need an attendant working group who looks at these issues in terms of global outlook. Because Professor Rosalie Hamilton was with us 2 weeks ago talking about endowment professorships that look at the need for some of these skills you mentioned. But unless a deliberate effort is made to actually go out there and achieve those things and bring them back to the likes of a UTech or any other institution, then we'll just be talking out of one side of our mouth without pretty much paying lip service to what needs to have action or implementation. So I take what you have said wholeheartedly. A faculty of manufacturing, Dr. Campbell, we wrote that down, a faculty of manufacturing with the type of skill sets across the entire UTech or across the entire space where that manufacturing can dissolve itself across the entire university, with a view of how those become agents of change or state agents of change to drive the academia. Boy, Prof, I know when I got you on this program, you know, one question I asked you, just dissolve the whole thing one time and give us the broad context. Welcome to this Thought Leadership one-on-one session and the role of the university professorship. So then, Prof. Morrison, it means then, you know, the university has to change. The living and learning has to change. It has to change.
Here are some hard points for you to absorb now.
Yes, sir.
Look at, take, for example, your sister institution on the airport road there, CMU, as it now is called.
Yes.
Right? That is a university of maritime engineering, you know, full stop. And that is how it has made its inroad internationally to the point where its graduates are already in a job before they graduate. It's 100% absorption into the industry from Norway to South Africa. Okay? Why? Because they have focused, concentrated, and oriented all of their energies into the niche that they have identified and that they have created and built. Now, let's turn some hard facts on ourselves, yourselves. UTech, you have put your finger on it. Sport on one hand, manufacturing in the broadest context on the other hand. You don't have any money. The government has very little to give you. The students can hardly pay. How then do you begin to make a difference as an institution worth its salt? You have many universities, you know, but most of them don't worth anything much, you know, right? They just have the name, but they can't turn around and show you anything that they can identify for themselves, right? You have a sport aspect matched by none else in the world. You have some manufacturing aspects. You had created even a little golf cart. If I remember rightly, you had worked at UWI on this pig heart, you know, alternative. You have had some innovations in the system there that could easily be taken, you know, from the Caribbean. Again, we're in the midst of the Caribbean. We're in the midst of sunlight. The whole role of solar power, you know, we have not taken it as our own and run with it. Okay, all I'm saying is we need to find maybe just 2 or 3 areas and focus around it. And if you do that, a lot of the rest of the university is going to have to, you finish the sentence. Why the silence so?
I had to take
Rally around
I had
it.
to take,
Rally
I had to
around
take a
it.
sip of water just now, Professor. But I had to take a sip of water because that one you have to digest it properly. You're so much on point. You're so much on point.
You have a number of programs that you're doing there, competing with other institutions that can do it just as well, if not even better. What is all of that? Get your act together to focus the little dollars you have and the few, minds that you have with that kind of expertise, and push that. Let that be the flag of the institution. And some of the other supporting areas can come with that. But you're going to have to find a leader in the whole academic world. Somebody has to come forth, all right, and take the institution out of the doldrums, because you can't be touching on all sorts of something and you're just middling and muddling, and you with everybody else. Everybody put out a degree in this and a degree in that.
Absolutely,
So that is not what you're about. You're about excellence.
Yes. I'm glad we're having this conversation this morning. I'm really happy that we're having a sobering Christmas conversation on December 6th. Yes.
You need to gather the minds. I'm just using an example now. All right. So I'm focusing on sport because that is where the minds around the study of the human biology, the study of the science of energy, the study of the environment, the climate, all these different things, that contribute to the best, scenarios that can support sport in its broadest context. Not just track and field. Track and field is just one of them, but a number of others have similar underlying thrusts. So, the law of sport, the entertainment of sport, the hospitality of sport, all what I'm trying to say, all of these things come in, but they come under sport, not a faculty of this or a faculty of that. They are supportive. They're underpinnings for your real leadership role. So, same thing in your manufacturing. Mind I didn't come with any. It's just as we're talking, I'm just pointing out to you where you need to think.
Yes,
because
indeed.
You are the young Turks, who are going to have to shake the place. Because if you sit down in the same modality that is there, you have no
accepted
definition for failure. That university is going to close. If you continue in the route that you're taking.
No, this is
you put out a little degree in this and a little degree in that, all of which don't make much difference.
Right, and the impact is not there. So it's well qualified what you have said, and
you're going to have to attract new people, new thinking, new investors, new professorships, bring in new blood.
New blood. All right. So
what new department have you introduced in the last 10 years?
No, I can't say we have. Dr. Campbell, as my co-host, can you say we have? I can't recall. No, I can't.
So you're not responding to all of this. What about all this climate change, this disaster thing? We have a pandemic. What is going on?
No, I have put to the university. I tell you this one. I've put to the university since the pandemic that we need to be looking at what equivalences of vaccination studies and so on to have a relevance in the conversation now. As a matter of fact, it's a unique opportunity to do so. So you are making a very profound point that the opportunities are here now to be engaged. But some persons look like they are playing lip service to this whole thing and not recognizing that if you don't hit the iron while it is hot, you're going to lose out on the, you're going to miss it. So Prof, the whole country, the world, the physical campus environments is like a dead mall. The classrooms are empty. If I walk around the UTech campus right now, finishing this podcast with you, those rooms have been empty for almost 2 years. And with
your canteens or your food courts are still running?
They're closed. I mean, you just have within striking distance of probably a Burger King or probably 1 or 2 outlets, but very.
So what is that telling you? What is that telling you? The people in the private sector are responding. They see where things are going. They're responding. So why you in academia can't see that you're supposed to be more intelligent?
All right. So on the point of that, one of the things that we in the engineering and computing space looking at is modeling new learning centers where we have industry come in with products and services, and we help them promote it for the wider market. That is an exclusive position of, let us say, engineering and computing, at least from where I sit. From where I sit as the head of computing in this conversation. But I like how you're speaking, because what it means across the wider university, we have to wake up and think and smell the coffee, for want of a better word, right? To see
cut away.
Yes, indeed. Cut away.
And focus.
Yes, listen, this is really a very provocative thought, Leadership 101, but it's real. You're hitting the real issues, and there is no excuse than to accept the reality of the points you are making. You know, against the background of this, you know, it therefore means the pedagogy has to change completely. It means if we have unwanted fat, we have to remove that, and we can't keep big elephants in the room, because it will bring us down. This has to be a conversation that the university has to now get into, and I'll have to engage Professor Giles, you know, even after this, for us to have that dialogue in the university as an urgency of point, which is why forums like this, podcast like this, is very supportive to the whole need to drive that kind of conversation. So you are saying the right things, we're hitting up the right points. So, you know, then, Professor, let me move to the argument of then finding the right type of endowment professorships now and professorship chairs. Because you have been the one who brought that to UTech, in my recollection. Anybody can correct me if I'm wrong. To have a strategic alignment against the points that you just raised about the need for how we pivot. Give me, in your words then, what type of professorship chairs the university should now put in place? If you say 1, 2, 3 to align the faculty of a manufacture and sports and so on, give me your clinical, I'll use that term, no pun intended, your clinical view of how that should look.
Sean, I defer being the first to bring an endowment to give you the classic example of an innovation in endowment.
Yes.
Which was not recognized.
Yes.
And which has achieved so much. Yes, and yet is yet to be significantly embraced. In the 70s, a fellow called Dennis Johnson was seconded from Carreras to then cast. That was an endowment. That was a professorship that we did not recognize, or we didn't call it that. But look what it has brought. It has brought us to the pinnacle of world.
Yes. You know.
So let's look into ourselves.
That's
we
right.
Don't need to look for the stars. We have some things right there amongst ourselves. Okay. Rosalie took a certain consciousness of what we call
community
small
service
businesses,
small business,
and showed, you know, a bank how it could benefit from getting people more certifiable and, you know, being able to understand how to manage their small enterprises and so on, right? You had a career as cast, you know, innovation that has resulted in a world supremacy. All right. Now we are saying to you, in a world where I look down the future scope, climate change.
Yes.
Global warming.
Yes.
Sea level rising.
Yes.
Adverse, you know, weather patterns.
Yes.
Probably
Pandemics.
even more earthquake, you know, activities within the region. Which institution is best suited now to begin to discuss the sciences around mitigation of, you know, severe adverse outcomes and or recovery to the kind of problems that would occur
in this pandemic? Right. What's the kind of?
Well, you know, I'm talking now. I've even, because the pandemic is something that we're going to live with. We've been living with pandemic ever since. Don't think that is anything different from the Spanish flu one going back and back, right? It's all there. But this climate change is real. And a university of technology should be the one that is putting itself in line, whether through its manufacturing aspects of things as to how you're going to build these things to protect them against severe, disaster outcomes, or how you're going to recoup after disaster. These are some of the thinking that should begin to align yourselves with and create a difference, right? One university is hell-bent on getting reparation money for slavery. No problem. That is a historical thing. With the technology, okay?
Yes.
Should be now setting that out as your own path.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're totally different. You're not competing in any
That's
sphere.
right. That's
and
right.
all of those little frill subjects that people quarreling over who's doing this or who's doing that, all that is nonsense. You want to get focused on the major areas, right? And restructure some of those departments and those programs to facilitate the development and the new source. So now, when private sector sees your positioning and your ability to help them to make new things that can improve on their competitiveness and their marketability, they will come with some dollars.
Yes.
It's not easy though, because they don't have much dollars, because even as big as some of our companies are in the world situation, they're no more than a, medium size, company. So you still are going to have to look to the diaspora.
Yes.
And that's a very good, avenue to use, because we have diaspora, throughout the world that we can tap if you can excite them.
Absolutely.
If you can excite them.
Absolutely. But Professor Morrison, it looks like I'm going to have to carry on a tour with me when I start to talk to them, because I have some plans in 2022. But this conversation kind of stimulating the thought that a past president, if you're available,
I can do it via Zoom, man. No
you
problem.
can do it via Zoom. Yes, Professor. All right, very good. No, it's a very good point.
Let me just, as we're closing off, let me just tell you how we are seen, from the eyes of the fast-moving developed world. Whilst I was at UWI, I led a team of scientists to Rockefeller University. And there I met with the chairman of the Pew Trust. He was then, I think he's a former Nobel Prize winner in physiology, a fellow called Thorsten Wieser. And he was married or related in some way to a Grenadian. So he had a certain Caribbean empathy, okay, and wanted to be of assistance to us here in the Caribbean. And after we discussed a number of potential projects and so on that we'd like to do, Thorsten leaned back in his chair and he said, "But are you guys serious about research and science down there?" Did you hear the question? You gone silent again.
No, I've heard you. No, yeah. Are you serious? Are you serious?
So this is how they conceptualize us. And we will continue to mire in mediocrity if we're spreading ourselves across areas that we have no business in terms of the mantra or the mandate or the title that we have given ourselves as an institution. A university of technology should be ramping itself up, looking at where things are going and repositioning itself.
And driving policy that will dictate that. Because I'm fully with you. I'm fully with you.
And your IT lead is one of the best that you could think of right now. I remember the days of SAPN and those young people sleeping, all over the weekend in a little room there on the campus.
Building out code.
These are the kinds of dedication that you need.
That's right. That's right. Across the academia. Yes. No, you have hit the nails on the head, Professor Morrison. I must tell you, you punch a real big punch, it's a knockout punch, and the body can't stand it. Have to get out of the ring. So I understand.
When we were there and rapidly trying to change things, and because we were trying to do something simultaneously so as not to marginalize too much, those who would review say, "But you're doing too much."
Yes.
But if they don't have the forecasting, they don't have the vision, what else can they do but criticize? Because they don't understand what you're doing.
They don't understand what is happening.
You understand? Anyway,
this is good stuff. This is good stuff.
I've been there, done that. I wish you the very best.
Professor,
okay?
Excellent conversation. Listen, I don't know if you have 2 minutes, can take some questions. If there are, but this is really packing the punch, and the homework is now set that, you know, the endowment professorships and chairs can be in an area of manufacture, whatever the source of it will be, from welding onwards, and spread that wing across the university and let people know we are serious. But, you know, we have to get the right thought leadership in place to drive some of this. I'm going to now, at this point, ask my colleagues on the floor, because we're managing this midday session here, and the current time as we manage this is 28 to 12. So we have a few minutes for questions, and I really want to open the floor. Very well said presentation, Professor Morrison, indeed. I'm going to open the floor to our colleagues who are here to ask any pertinent questions that you think Professor Morrison could elucidate on. So the floor is open, and a pleasant good morning to everyone who were able to join this morning. Thank you all for coming. The floor is open, and you can indicate by the raised hand emoji if you choose to, and I'll acknowledge you as a part of the discourse. Thank you so much, colleagues. The floor is open. Some people still digesting this thing, you know, still digesting it. It's still digesting it. Colleagues, any points for Professor Morrison in this conversation? He gave a candid conversation. I have to respect that. Yes, Mr. Clark, the floor is open. Please proceed, sir. Yes. Roran?
A very profound presentation, Prof. Morrison. Not surprising though, based on what I've seen you done in the past. This is some of the conversation that we have been having, both myself and Professor Top and probably David White on a regular basis, in terms of moving UTech beyond, as you put it, from Moran Point to Negril Point. We have to be looking in the Caribbean, in the different diaspora, in terms of where our students are coming from, and yes, positioning ourselves for what is happening with this new way of doing things. But my question also is, are some persons ready to take these type of leaps, these type of innovation, these types of thinking, these types of moving out of your comfort zone to pivot into something where the borders are no longer what they used to be, or there's no borders at all? So I was happy and very intrigued listening to you today.
Warren, I just want to comment by referring to the well-known phrase of the philosopher who said, "Show me a satisfied man and I'll show you a failure." You gotta get out of that comfort zone, boy. You gotta get out of it. And remember too, you know, Roran, as we speak, and whilst you look at Jamaica and the Caribbean as a source of your student body, as you get into an international sphere with a flag of excellence, you're not now pulling on Caribbean only. You're pulling from around the world where they want to be associated with the best. And so you can open up, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roran, for that question. I acknowledge Stanford Graham on the floor with his hand up. Mr. Graham, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Professor Top Chair.
Yes.
And Dr. Campbell, and good morning to you, Professor Morris, for that enlightening discussion. It's really uncomfortable, it makes us feel, but it is the uncomfortableness that caused us to move. with alacrity in a particular direction. I have always thought that there's a different model for a university. I remember speaking to one of my earning studies some years ago, probably 5 years ago, and she found a niche in sports and nutrition, and she could not satisfy them at either university. So she had to complete a degree at UTech and then go and do a degree next door to be able to create that niche for herself. I don't know how far she's on her journey, but I made this point to now say that probably in the future, I'm envisioning a University Council of Jamaica being a regulator within the education industry, whereby they will set out general framework for credits that students ought to take to reflect different types of degree. And those students can go to almost any university around the world and do that component that is important for the long-term degree. And they can do proctored exams either in person or online and get the credit to come in. If that model is developed by the University Council of Jamaica, it means that our entity at a university will really be weakened going forward. And it is now very practical that that regulatory framework can be put in place and give students an opportunity to get flexible degrees. Also, I have always been mindful of what I would like to call a poor man's degree. That gentleman who found himself, or lady who found himself on the wrong side of the law and they're in a penal institution, we now are able to extend a degree offering or a tertiary level offering to those persons, recognizing that they will have to come out eventually and make a contribution to the society. That's one important point I'm taking away. I'm going to try to develop on that. And next thing, and the last one, you mentioned the climate change, the United Nations framework on climate change. One of the legs that it stands on is the energy transition. Fatih Birol, who is the head of the International Energy Agency, speaks about this a lot. So in Jamaica, we have an abundant resource of, well, the Caribbean, abundant resource of mountainous areas beside beaches or beside waterways. We can create what we call a double dam for energy storage. We have a lot of sun and a lot of wind energy, and there's a lot of other companies around the world who are harnessing these resources and transforming their economy and community. I think that is one way we probably could focus. What are your thoughts on those ideas?
Thank you, Mr. Graham. I don't know, Prof, you heard Mr. Graham's comment just now.
Yeah, I think he's on the right track. My comment on that is full speed ahead. You know,
full speed. Sorry. Prof.
I was
probably accidentally. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. And I was saying that, you know, what he has said is clearly the way forward, and he should be getting together with his group of like-minded individuals
and
to
move
begin
to
chart a way forward, you know, because that has to be the kind of thinking and action that we need to undertake. But full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead. I like that.
Yeah.
The ship needs to have a steer its course now. Excellent point. Absolutely. Excellent point. Dr. Noel Hilberry, I noticed in the chat you made a comment. You're asking for clarification between education and the degree and the type of education the student gets. I think that's what I noticed. You wanted to say something, or should I just comment on it? How do we even unpack the thought that students are here to get a degree, not to get an education? Aren't they synonymous? If not, could you enlighten my darkness? I think, you know, Dr. Hilberry, I know you are from the College of Health. What I do know is the fact that many students come to the university and they will say that, listen, you know, my parents sent me here to get a degree. and they will just take it and go home. Some of them never apply, they never practice it. And what you're seeing in the wider scheme of things is that many institutions abroad, let me start with the internationalization. You think of the Googles and all these other places, they stop accepting degrees as credentialing for persons looking work, because some of the institutions out there globally are saying that the universities are failing with respect of bringing the graduates into relevance relating to fields, certain fields. And I know that firsthand in engineering and computing, because that's where I am practicing. You know, many institutions globally are now saying they will dispense of the degrees and they will hire based on aptitude and attitude. You know, so it is no longer left to a final degree. They may do what is called micro-credentialing, or credential stacking of courses. They take a few short courses, they have the competency-based requirement, and they can hit the job market instead of waiting on the 4-year degree graduate. So those are the things at UTech we have started to advocate for in the curriculum reviews. You give the options that you complete a degree, or if they don't complete a degree, you give them micro-credentialing so that even the public can come in. Professor Morrison might want to come and learn something new in IT. He may not be interested in getting a full degree. He may just want to take a few specific competency-based classes that allow him to go back and hit the ground running. So those are the things that are being entertained in that conversation. So the degrees, as we know them in the universities, not limited to UTech, sometimes they need a revamp. 20 years of the same curriculum. The world has gone, just passed us by then. And therefore, those are the thoughts and comments that were raised. I actually took that from a college president elsewhere recently, who made the similar point in this regard. I hope that clarifies the rationale behind the question that was on the deck that was presented earlier.
But you know, Sean, if I may come in, maybe not directly on point, I think you answered that fairly well there. I just wanted to be a little tangential. You know what we never discussed?
Yes.
What we never discussed was that of lifelong learning, you know.
Yes.
And how it comes back into the picture. But that is for another point, because I have another meeting shortly.
Yes, Professor.
But the point we wanted to take with us there too is, let me summarize it. In my short stint with the government as Director General in National Commission on Science and Technology, we put out several times for individuals to submit innovations, new ideas, discoveries, inventions.
Yes.
And you know, 70% of the submissions came from what you would say the man in the street. Not from institutions, right?
Whoa.
Not from organized thinking groups.
Whoa.
The man in the street looking at his environment and responding with a problem-solving approach in innovation. Whoa. I just thought I wanted to, and how does he do that? It is based on a lot of his, general acquisition of knowledge and application over the years. And we cannot omit that from factoring it into the whole of the higher education level certification, which needs a total new look.
Total revamp. Excellent point indeed. Excellent point. You see, this is why these thought leadership forums are very necessary. On point, Prof. On point. So Dr. Hilberry, you're consistent with that response now, I hope so. If you want to respond back in the chat, I will just acknowledge that. Okay, yes. Oh, you said please do. All right. Well, based on the response, you can let me know if that is satisfactory. Excellent conversation today, Prof. Morrison. There's never enough time to. Dr. Campbell, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Prof has to go. But I just have a question for him. Prof, as a distinguished thought leader, how do you disrupt the thought leadership of academic managers or leaders who continue to develop strategies that look to government as the overarching financier of those strategies?
The problem is, if you're in a government-based institution, your hands are tied because there is the bureaucracy, okay, and there's the politics that will certainly, drag across your track and, derail you because they're not going to understand what you're at, right? I can tell you that straight off, okay? And nor do they want to, if it is not in keeping with their blindfolded approach to dealing with the poverty and the work and the putting various things in different places. So, that is the kind of constraint that you're going to have. So I am going to suggest that you're going to have to be bold. You're going to have to get a little team together, okay? Because you hadn't be prepared to have your heads cut off. But don't worry, right? There's John the Baptist, but much came in terms of revelations thereafter. So don't get yourself unduly worried. Push on. That's all I can say. They're calling me for the next meeting now, guys.
Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much for this riveting conversation this morning. We really enjoyed the time. I catch up with you. This has been Thought Leadership 101. Excellent. We sincerely appreciate from the UTech community the time you spent this morning, sir. And do have a blessed day, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you much. All the best, Sean, and everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Enjoy the Christmas.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, and everyone here should agree. Excellent conversation this morning. A lot to unpack, ladies and gentlemen. It's almost coming up on 12 noon, and Prof. Morrison had agreed to do this podcast with us at a moment's notice when I had reached out. Time is the essence, and these are very busy people. So when you do get the opportunity, you leverage it quickly. For those of us who are still here, I don't know if you have any questions you still want to speak on, because the floor is still open. I'll keep this up until midday, which is what I had agreed as a conversation. I'm seeing Nola's response here. Thanks for your response. It supports education, in particular, the emphasized knowledge and application. Yes, the emphasized knowledge and education. I know, Dr. Hilbert, there's this whole notion of education versus training. And as you heard, Prof. Morrison alluded to a while ago, the need for lifelong learning. And we describe that in this space today as education 4.0, where, that can be done completely online. But the relevance to it getting a degree sometimes may not be even warranted. So that's why many academic institutions have to be putting themselves on Coursera and otherwise to promote their product and their market relevance. UTech has to put itself now in that position where all the faculties and the schools and so on must now pivot and market their programs in a serious way going forward, and to demonstrate differences. We have to stop comparing ourselves, as Prof. Morrison alluded to, with other possible institutions. Just let us be our own game changer and do the things that are right. Otherwise, we have problems coming. 2 years into a pandemic, and if you're not pivoting with the right type of curriculum, the right type of thrust towards research, and the right type of thrust towards finding the resources that will make you remain relevant, relying on subvention dollars will kill us off slowly, because there's nothing else but that to survive on. So we have to now become the masters of our own destiny in a sensible, very sensible way. Dr. Campbell, my co-host, yes, the floor is yours, sir. Please proceed. Please proceed.
Yes, I'm reflecting on what Prof. Morrison said today.
Yes.
As well as, a recent presentation that you gave regarding Industry 5.0. And I'm heartened by it to see that that vision is so relevant, to see how can we transform. So even though in your presentation back then you did not name manufacturing as a central figure, but the whole idea behind it was this integration of different talents, different skills coming together to solve, industry's problem.
Problems, yes.
Because you framed it under industry 5.0, which we know is going to bring together all kinds of disciplines.
Yes,
and
automation of the mechanization processes. Yes, yes.
Right. So the whole process of beginning to allow our students to select courses that are scattered across the university. But even before we do that, the university community needs to have internal discussion where we're now talking more about applying knowledge rather than just dispensing a whole bunch of theories that seem not to go anywhere, and that the students cannot connect the pieces or the dots, some people will say, to create their own imagery of what this is. And when they have exhausted that, by then the university would be, our schools and colleges would be surveying what is out there and knowing what kind of partnering we can do with other institutions so that our students can mix and match their programs. You know, one of the things that we seem to have not grasped is that a lot of self-learning is taking place in this period of the pandemic, where students are accessing resources. Some have more means than others, and it is causing this divide, which I would say this inequity, because if they can afford to buy into some of these traditional publishing houses or these distributors of resources, they now put them into labs where they get practice with the textbook that they buy. They don't have to come through, they don't have to be enrolled in any specific program. Once they buy a textbook from certain, like a Cengage or a Red Shelf, etc., Vital Source, etc., what is happening now is that they are now exposing our same students, if they desire, into their labs where they work and develop expertise, right? And the sad truth about it is that some of our own academics are not even afraid with what is happening out there, and that's why we may be losing the contact and the engagement that we should be having with our students.
You're on point there, definitely on point. And I tell you, Professor Morrison's short but important arguments with respect of how the academia needs to be repositioning itself is a profound argument coming from a past president, and we have to pay attention to that in our going forward, because otherwise we are all going to sit around waiting for some miracle to happen, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, which is why these podcast sessions are important. It sort of jolts the very foundation on which the academia thrives. It produces the sensible conversations that we need to have. Of course, all of this podcast will be submitted in evidence to the university podcast archives for the general university and alumni public and otherwise to be listening to. We are happy that we can bring this to you live, from Kingston, Jamaica, December 6, 2021, but there's so much still to unpack from Professor Morrison's presentation, which we'll have to do internal to the university as a part of that continued dialogue. But the floor is still open. Any additional points? I know some person didn't speak when Prof. Morrison was engaged, at the time, but I'm still opening the floor for any other additional comments in this regard, and to move things forward in terms of the conversation. I like the concept of the manufacturing faculty. Every faculty is a manufacturing faculty. If you're not manufacturing, what we do? We're not doing anything there if we're not manufacturing. So we have to look beyond the shores of of Jamaica and start looking at how to partner. I put forward, Dr. Hilberry, that the College of Health and other areas, we should be looking at vaccination studies to support the notion of how we're going to treat with matters in the pandemic. I'm writing a few papers, just position papers right now on pandemic and pandemic policy provisions, but I don't know if we have the kind of enthusiasm nationally to do that kind of work, but it is an opportunity now. That's one example I would want to say that supports the equivalence of some type of manufacture. Never to be afforded to us again outside of a pandemic. Omicron is on us around the corner, which typifies a fourth wave. What are we doing as a university to respond to some of these nagging concerns? I have to shape the thing by the core, because in the academia, we are subject matter experts in these areas. Let us demonstrate that. That's where the money going to come from, as Prof. Morrison is alluding to. You got to walk the walk and talk the talk in order to get those resources coming to you. So I put it to my colleagues in the rest of the university. Let us be game changers here. Let us not just be waiting for something to happen, and I'm seeing it more and more by the day. So he's right. He's a past president of the University of Technology, Jamaica. He has sat in the highest seat of the university that sees these things quite well. Who am I to be questioning and disputing that view? It is a reasonable view, and I think we have achieved the merits of what this podcast has set out today. What it now tells us, that we have to go back quickly to the drawing board and share with our colleagues local to the different spaces on how we formulate an agenda and an action plan that drives those changes. I put it to the deans, I put it to the heads of schools like myself who substantively in roles like this. I put it to my colleagues who teach and lecture. I put it to the administrative teams that this kind of conversation and activity that follows on from the conversation must be happening now. Because failing which, we are writing our own demise. I took that one with a cringe when Prof. Morrison indicated that if we sit and accept the status quo of what presents itself before us today, then we will be just as guilty of whatever demise happens in the university environment while we are here in watch. And he's right in this regard. So that is my 2 cents today on this riveting conversation. I don't want to say anything more, but we want to accept, So Dr. Hilberry, you're saying manufacture based on the needs and in context, of course. Every area is a manufacturing area. The needs and the context will drive that needs, of course. And so just to elucidate on that point then, Dr. Hilberry, is the fact that if I'm in computing and engineering, we can do digital manufacture for buildings. Then we can go to Dr. Young, he was here earlier, and I'm sure he's still here, and look at how we build that out from PhD as an example, as a partnership between the two faculties. In your area, and engineering and computing, for example, if we serious that we want to do the vaccination studies, but what I'm saying is a call to action. It's a call to action with the courtesies of those who are in the play. So, for example, vaccination studies on the pandemic. Let us look at the data, start there with the data and start dissecting the data as the College of Health and the Faculty of Engineering and Computing, and present the mathematical models. Let us look at the data, do some insight analysis on the data, and then use that to drive policy. I have 2 articles right now that I had drafted up. I'm going to send one to you that looks at policy provision for COVID-19 and COVID-19 studies. We are not putting anything out as it relates to these areas. We're not signaling, and argue we don't have to wait until you are the head of our institution. We individually inside the institution should do that signaling. And what it might be suggesting to me, that's a thought, is that we may not be thinking on those things as bread and butter issues. And they are fast going to become bread and butter issues if you don't take a proactive step. And then you lose out. As Prof. Morrison said, the parts of the institution could close as it relates to not being able to have a proactive response. I was listening carefully. I want us to listen to this talk again after we have done this recording and have it out there. You know, I'm going to invite Professor Giles to have a sit down, you know, in this regard. It's very important. But there you go, Dr. Hilberry. There you go. These are the things. But I don't want to finish this conversation and then it was a nice podcast. I would love to have persons volunteering from across the university in this matter. And most of us who are working with the university must remember it's a bread and butter for many, and feeling which if you don't deal with the bread and butter matter, you won't have any more bread and butter to actually have. So these are these kind of podcast sessions here is really to evoke the kind of response necessary, colleagues, to get these outcomes. No question. So Prof. Morrison was on point. He made it clear. It looked like he thought about it long before he came here today as to how he could respond to us. And I just engaged him recently on this. All right. Any other thoughts? Marcia Williams, anybody else? Note your concerns, Dr. Hilberry, you know. Stanford, good that you guys could come. And it is now close to midday, and we're going to have to continue. It is now 3 o'clock past midday, colleagues. So I'm now going to consider that we are at the end of the session, unless there's any more comments from any of us. All right, I'll stop the recording.